Hello and welcome to another episode of me reacting to fan-made cards. Today we have a special episode because same as the last two times, I will go over the content produced for this year's Dutch Open Terraforming Mars event. For those that don't know, the Dutch Open is an annual event that happens in the Netherlands, and it includes a big Terraforming Mars tournament, a fan-made card contest, and more. And I've talked about it the last 2 years already, and this year's event will be held on September 26th, and you can still enter your name on the waiting list. You'll find the link for that in the description below, so check that out if you want to go. And yeah, same as the last times, we will go over the cards that made it into the finals of the card making contest. But this time, the cards are actually based around a brand new custom mechanic, and you will see it on the screen already, the Delta project track. So the law behind this is basically that due to the terraforming Mars, or due to the terraforming of the red planet, soil erosion is becoming problematic. And to counteract this, they brought in the experts, they brought in Dutch engineers to work on the Delta project. And the players in the game can also contribute towards this by spending power to advance on this track. And this will then give them rewards. You see on the left side of the track, there are a number of tags, and you need each of those tags to reach the respective rank on the Delta project track. So for the first rank on the Delta project track, you need a building tag, for example. But you can do multiple steps on this track. If you do multiple in one go, then you will skip over the rewards that you haven't landed on. So if you do 2 steps and land on the second position of the track, you will only get either a power or heat production. You will not get the 2 steel or 2 plants that you would get on the first position of the track. But how do you actually advance on the track? You mainly do this with this new prelude. Let me zoom in a bit. The Delta project. This is a prelude that every player gets dealt and gets in addition to their regular preludes. So every player will end up with at least 3 preludes if they play with this fan-made expansion. And with this Delta project prelude, you have an action that you can logically use once per gen to spend any amount of power to do any amount of steps on the Delta project track. But once again, you need the respective tags to advance to the next level. So don't forget about that. Each player has their own track. That's why there are 5 tracks here. But the last 2 levels can only be reached by 1 player each. So not multiple players cannot get the 5 points at the very top of the track. That's quite important. So yeah, most of the cards we will go over in this video will in some way interact with this expansion. But if you want more insight into the rules of the expansion and the lore behind it, I have linked the official how to play video in the description. And as I said, also all the information to the event itself. But let's go over the cards. And the first card is called Corporate Espionage. Quite interesting lore. Basically, it costs 8 MC. It comes with an Earth and an event tag, so quite good combo potential with this card. And it says reduce another player's Delta track by 1 step unless they are already at the VP level. So you can't push someone off the VP levels and then claim them yourselves. That would kind of invalidate this race to the top, basically. But it can help prevent someone from getting there. And then in the same way, you increase your Delta track by 1 step. Both of you need the required tags in play, and both players receive the bonuses associated with the resulting levels. So that's interesting. That's a big trade-off. Yes, you might get ahead of someone in the race to the top, but it also gives your opponent the option to claim rewards twice. first of all, they get that reward that they've already gained before, and again, because they get bumped down one level and get that reward again. But they can also get up one level again afterwards on their turn, for example, and get that reward again. Obviously, this won't work with the Jovian tag. Basically, on this second to last level of the regular track, you get a Jovian tag if you reach it. You can only claim this once, so you can't get two Jovian tags. That should probably still be clarified on the card, but that's how it works with another card in this expansion. But yeah, this is quite interesting, and I love it that there's such a big trade-off. The big trade-off being that your opponent will claim rewards twice, and that can be huge. Especially, some of the rewards are really, really strong. So if you look at, for example, a level 5, you look at 4 cards off the top of the deck and take 2 of them in hand. That's a huge card draw. That's basically a free business contact. The level above could give you quite a few plans. The 2 animals could be 2 points. So it's really, really strong what you can get on this track. Obviously, you need the required text. That can be difficult sometimes. I can't be certain yet how important it is to get to the very top. I think it's quite hard to get to the very top because you need all of the required text for it. And in the end, it's just 5 points. And I think the rewards you get on the way there are way more impactful than the 5 points you get in the end. It's a nice bonus because obviously to get to the top, you will have claimed a lot of rewards on the way there already. You will not claim the rewards of steps you overtake, but still you will claim quite a few. But yeah, I think this card, in my opinion, could be a bit weak because, as I said, I think the rewards on the way are the important thing, not the 5 points in the end. And this actually gives your opponent the ability to claim rewards twice. What I haven't talked about the Delta Project track yet is because you spend power with the Delta Project Prelude. This is in competition with trading. So if you're playing with Colonies and the Delta Project track, then the whole Data Project track is much weaker because you probably want to use your power for trading. Sometimes there's enough good colony tiles in play, and then the Delta Project track is a really good alternative to trading in a gen where you're not first player. And also because you don't need 3 power or 4 like with bumpers that get completely obsolete in Colonies, the Delta Project track could still be worthwhile. You could spend just 1 power per gen, for example. But yeah, that's at least one thing to consider. I'll place a small cut here because someone out there is working on something. And I want to see if you can hear that on the recording, because if yes, then I need to take a short break of recording. See you in a second. Okay, so I think you can't hear the people working outside. At least I hope so. So let's actually move on to the next card, which is Delta Surge. This costs 16, comes with a science tag, and lets you place an ocean. So it's just 1 MC more expensive than the standard Project Ocean, but also comes with a science tag, and just 5 MC more expensive than Subterranean Reservoir. So what do we get for those 5 MC? We know the science tag, which is valuable as well, but the effect says when advancing multiple steps on a Delta Project track at once, gain each step's reward. Does not apply to the 2 VP step. So obviously the VP are only counted at the end, so it's great that this is clarified. It really depends on your game plan. There's 9 regular steps on the track, plus the 2 VP steps. You really can skip the 2 VP step to get to the 5 VP step, because you wouldn't get that at the end anyways. So there's 10 steps you want to do. You would really want to get all the rewards on the track. Let's take a look at it again. You would really prefer to get all of the rewards on the track. They are really strong if you can. So overtaking steps without Delta Surge is really bad in my opinion. But because there's 10 steps, the game would need to be 11 generations long for you to be able to do one step each gen, because Delta Project, the Prelude, is an action card that lets you do that once per gen. And that requires you to play at least one power prod in Gen 1, and then to keep that one power prod online, not use it for anything else throughout the whole game. So that's quite difficult. So Delta Search can bring a lot of utility, but it's really specific and niche for that use case. Is that worth the 5 MC that you pay on top of Subterranean Reservoir? Let's say 4 or 3 MC, because you also get that science tech. If you need that science tech, if that's useful to you, then I'd say yes, it's definitely worth it. And of course, if you're not playing with colonies, and the Delta track competes with that. What's really nice is, let's say you play Delta Search, and that enables you to play Mass Converter. You get Mass Converter online, and then the next gen you just do 6 steps on the Delta track and get all of the rewards at once. That would be really, really nice, and I really like that the science tag is there to help you with that. I'd say this is an okay card. I like it more. I like corporate espionage lore-wise and mechanic-wise, and the trade-off I like on it. So I like the card in total. But I think Delta Search is stronger, let's say it like that, and more beneficial to your gameplay. Let's move on to Delta Works 1. There's 2 cards that are called Delta Works, so that's why there's Delta Works 1 and Delta Works 2, because this was a card making contest. The participants didn't know what the other people would call their cards. So Delta Works 1 is really cheap, costs only 4 MC, comes with a building tag, and is specifically geared towards playing with colonies. So that's interesting, because we already know the Delta Project track competes heavily with the colonies expansion. The effect is that when doing the Delta Project action with your prelude, or when you trade with a colony, you may use steel as energy. This is really nice. Steel prod costs roughly the same as power prod. Well, basically exactly the same if you compare mine with power plant. The cool thing about steel, though, is that you can store it. Power gets turned into heat each gen. Steel you can store. So even if you have less than 3 power, less than 3 steel prod, you can use that steel to trade. You can accumulate it over gens and then use it. Also, there's more steel to be picked up on most of the maps with placement bonuses. And as I understand it, you can also mix and match your steel and power for trading and for the Delta Project track as well. For example, use 2 steel and 1 power to trade. That's a really, really nice effect. I think I would love that. I would love that even without the Delta Project expansion. To be a card that allows you to use steel to trade. I really, really like that mechanic, because I think the more expansions you introduce to the game, and especially colonies, the more building tags and or the less building tags in percentage of the deck you have in game, the more steel prod suffers as a result. There's a lot of building tags in the base game, but the expansions introduce a lot of space tags and tags for other strategies, and not a lot of building tags. So steel prod gets worse and worse the more expansions you introduce, and this card would very much help out steel prod and that type of strategy. So I think this card would be worth playing for sure, even without the Delta Project expansion, but with it, obviously even more. And it would help the problem that the Delta Project track competes with trading, because now you can use both steel and power, and that way you should easily find the resources to both trade and enhance your position on the Delta project track. I really, really like that. It could lead to you doing multiple steps in one go more often than not, because you will more easily have the ability to do that. Once again, I don't think you should do that. I think you should try to get each and every reward because they are really strong. But let's move on. Delta Works 2. This costs 15, comes with a wild tech. It requires 2 oceans in play, and it says whenever you play an ocean tile, you may use the Delta project action. I think, first of all, this needs a bit of clarification. Does that mean you just get a step on the Delta project track each time you place an ocean? If you have to require tax, or do you still need to spend the power that you need to spend with the prelude? I think that needs to be clarified. I probably think it's the first way. So you place an ocean, you just get 1 step on the track for free if you have to require tax. But yeah, some clarification would be nice. I think this is quite strong. I mean, it's similar in price, a little bit more expensive, but similar in price to Arctic Algae. Of course, it comes with the requirement of 2 oceans in play, so you can never get 9 activations out of this, maximum of 7 if there's no oceans removed via turmoil or something like that, or if you don't have adaptation tech. But the wild tech is really nice, and we know how strong Arctic Algae is. Obviously, Arctic Algae, one factor of why it's so strong is because it combos really nicely with oceans, so you often can take 4 plants, and that means that you can often immediately convert afterwards, and the oceans work nicely together with the greeneries that you place, giving you ocean rebates. But I'd say the rewards you get from the Delta project track are stronger than ocean placement bonuses most of the time. I mean, the first reward on the track just gives you 2 plants straight up, or 2 steel if you want to steal. Obviously, you don't get any ocean rebates like you get with Arctic Algae. Wait, that's absolute an absolute mistake by me. Obviously, you get the ocean rebates. You still place the ocean completely normally. So we only need to compare the 2 plants you get with Arctic Algae to the rewards in the Delta project track. And there I think the rewards in the Delta project track are better, especially the higher up you go. I mean, I already talked about reward number 5 on the track, which is basically a free business contacts. That's 10 MC worth and value right there. That's insane. And also the titanium production obviously is 10 MC worth and value if you compare it to titanium mine. But depending on what stage in the game that comes online, it's worth less than that, because production gets worse and worse the longer that the game goes on. But still, these rewards are really, really strong. So I think, where were we? Delta Works 2. This is quite a strong card, especially with the wild tech up here. I still think it needs a slight clarification, but I like it. And I like that it incentivizes terraforming. One thing about it, obviously, that is worse than Arctic Algae is it requires you to place these oceans, not everyone. But the good thing is that even incentivizes terraforming even more, because now you want to get these oceans down. So if you have good ocean placing cards on hand, Delta Works is really nice. And even if not, the wild tech is really good, and it could even then be worth it to SP some oceans. I mean, even Arctic Algae enables you to take really efficient actions with SP oceans, so Delta Works should too. Next up, we have Development Manager. This costs 10 MC as an Earth tech, and it says each time you increase production 2 or more steps, or advance 2 or more steps on the Delta project track, gain 3 MC. Once again, one slight clarification: does that mean two or more production steps of the same production, or is playing something like Fuel Factory, which grants one MC prot and one titanium prot, is that already qualifying for development manager? I don't think so. I think it needs two of the same production. So something like sponsors would be okay. Something like geothermal power would be okay, but not something like Fuel Factory. If you get this down early on, I think this is quite strong. I think this is quite strong if you get it down early on. It needs, it costs 13, so it needs 5 activations to pay off. It has an Earth tag, which can be nice for like Cartel or Earth Office or something. I think if you go for an engine strategy, then you should easily be able to hit this quite often, especially increasing production 2 or more steps. Once again, I don't think you should take 2 or more stacks on the Delta project track at once too often, except if you have a delta surge, then it's not a problem. But this left part of the effect you should trigger quite often if you're playing an engine strategy. While we're talking about engine strategy, there's obviously one thing I have to mention when talking about Delta Project. This is heavily geared towards engine. Rush players, first of all, will not really accumulate a ton of tags. And then I think the problem with this is also the ordering of tags. Building, power, and earth tags are played by basically everyone. Everyone is playing these tags. Earth tags are great for any strategy. You need power in any often you need power in any strategy, and building tags are just the most common tag in the game. You will get building tags down in any strategy as well. So these first three are not the problem. Space tag is more engine geared already. Obviously, you're playing a lot of space tags as rush players as well, but mainly space events, and those don't count. Then there's the science tag. Yes, rush players from time to time play stuff like Marsu as well, but most science tags are obviously engine pieces. And the problem is plant, microbe, and animal tags. Those are the tags that rush players can also get down. They are really high up, and the space and science tag basically block you from getting there early on as rush players. And then, yeah, the Jovian tag, you're not getting down as a rush player most often. So, in general, rush players will not be advancing on this track that much compared to engine players. So if both Colonies and Delta Project are in play, that's rough for rush players. But we already know that Colonies is also is already an expansion that makes engine much better, and Delta Project is similar to a lesser extent, I would say, but similar. All right, let's talk about Dutch Mountains, the next card here on this list. Costs 13. It requires you to be on the 3rd step, at least, of the Delta Project track. Has an Earth tag, and it has an action that says, gain Delta Project resources of your current step or a step you have passed, excluding the Jovian tag, Jovian step. So you can choose either your current level or any of the levels below you and get those resources once per gen. That's really nice. So if we look at the rewards again, I'm especially looking at number 5 reward, the free business contact. That's, if you can trigger this multiple times with Dutch Mountains, that's insane. But just triggering it to get 2 MC production per gen, or to get another 2 plants to convert, or up here to get another, I don't know, 5 plants to convert, that's insane. That's really strong. Obviously, you need to get up the track to get the better rewards. But in the end, this can be 5 plants, this can be 2 points, this can be the business contacts. It can be really strong. Probably should also clarify, not only the Jovian step should be excluded, but also the victory points, because that's how it should work. But really, really strong card. Especially in the mid to late game, you can claim some crazy rewards with this if you're making good progress on the project track. So to see the project track, especially if you have some of these cards, is really, really important. Little Dutch Boy, I was explained that this refers to a Dutch legend or story of a Dutch boy that basically saved his village by putting a finger into a dike that was getting flooded, more or less. It costs 9 MC, it has a wild tag, and as an action you can add 1 steel to this card. That steel on the card can be used as a resource if you want, and it also counts as a resource on your player board, which is relevant for at least one card that I will put on screen right now. I don't quite remember the name, that meme card that only costs 1 and gives you a TR rating or TR increase. But instead of just using this as a steal to pay for a card, for example, you can also use this action to remove 1 steal and place it in front of another player's mark on the Delta project track, blocking their advancement that generation. That blockade gets removed after the gen. That's rage-inducing. Basically, each gen where you're second player, you could use this action to put a steal on this card, and then each gen your first player, you could remove that steal again and blockade your opponents from, or your one opponent from advancing on the track. Obviously, much worse in a multiplayer game with more than 2 players, because you can only ever block one of your opponents. But in a 2P game, rage-inducing, because the track is important. With this card, you can basically guarantee that you will not lose out on the 5 points you can get in the end, because every second gen your opponent can just not advance on the track. That's really, really annoying for them. But it also costs quite a bit. But in reality, if you compare this to a research coordination that costs 4 and just has a wild tag, so you only pay 5 for the action, that's not too bad actually. So I think this is quite strong. I think this is really quite strong. Your opponent, if they want to compete with you for the final steps on the track, they will at some point then need to do multiple steps per gen, which I already said is not that great, because I think the rewards on the way up to the points are better than the points themselves. Then we have Quantum Research. I think this is the only card in this expansion that doesn't somehow relate to the Delta project track. It requires 4 science tags, costs 11 MC, comes with a wild tag, so another wild tag card, a lot of those in this expansion. And it just says when you buy a card to hand, you pay 1 MC less for it. Really funny if you're already playing Terror Labs, because then you're not paying anything for the cards you buy, and could be a lifesaver if you're playing Polyphemus. But obviously you need to get that down first. It doesn't count for Polyphemus in the initial research phase. But for this is good for any corp. But obviously to varying degree depending on when you get this down. 4 science tags can sometimes be hard to reach, and if this is only played 2 gens before the end of the game, you're saving at most 8 MC. Then obviously it's not worth it. You need this card to pay back its cost to be really good. Obviously the wild tag could carry some of the card, if this allows you to, for example, get AGT down or something like that. You need to remember there's also cards like Inventors Guild in game, where you buy cards, and this also works for them. So like a simple concept, but we don't have a project card, at least in game, that does something like that yet. And I love it how it combos with Terra Labs and Polyphemus. So really, really nice. And sorry, I need to make another small cut here because someone is ringing at the door. All right, crisis averted. Let's get to the last few cards. We have Social Heating, very cute cat here. Costs 12 MC, requires that you have a city in play. Another wild tag, okay. A lot of wild tags. The effect I love. Anytime any player moves on the delta track, gain an equal amount of heat as steps taken. So, for example, if an opponent does 3 steps on the delta project track, you get 3 heat. This is really bad in a 2-player game, in my opinion. Obviously, the effect is really bad in a 2-player game. The card can still be worth it because the effect carries it some way, and then the wild tag could do the rest if you really need a wild tag. Wild tags are generally very useful. But if you're playing with 3 or more players, then this can be really good. Because, as I said, there's how many steps again? 5, 9, 11 steps. 2 of those can only be done by 2 players. So realistically, there's 9 steps, 9 per player. That's 27 heat in the 3-player game, plus the 2 for the 2-point steps, 29 heat. That's pretty good. So 9 steps per player. If we compare that to like import of advanced GHG, that is 2 heat prot per gen, costs a little less than this. In a 10 in a game which goes 10 gens, if you play import of advanced GHG, that's 18 heat in total you get, because you get 9 production phases before the game ends. So let's say in a 2-player game with Delta Project Track, you get 18 heat plus potentially 2 more from the last 2 steps. That's the same heat production as import of advanced GHG, but this comes with the restriction that you can only play it once you have a city in play. You don't know when the heat is coming, potentially slower than with the import of advanced GHG. So in a 2-player game, I would say it's not that strong. The wild tech carries it somewhat. But in a 3-player game and up, you're already getting 50% more potentially than with import of advanced GHG. Obviously, it requires everyone to do the maximum amount of steps, so maybe that's not realistic. But at least in a 4-player game already, you're getting much more out of it than with import of advanced GHG. At some point, if you go up in player count, let's say at 5 players, maybe the game ends too fast for everyone to do all of their steps, or to at least do a majority of their steps. And then social heating could be getting worse again. But in a 5-player game, I also think the payoff goes much faster because everyone wants to do at least some steps. So in Gen 2, everyone will probably do like their first step or something. You already get 5 heat. That could be quite nice. So yeah, I think not that great in lower player counts, pretty good in higher player counts. Wild tech always useful. That's what I think about social heating. And then the last card of this fan expansion, Storm Surge Barrier, costs 14 MC, requires that you have a city tile adjacent to an ocean. It has a power tag and a building tag. And as an action, you can either gain 1 energy per tile you have next to an ocean, or spend 1 energy to advance 1 step on the Delta Project track. You might say, why in the world would I do the second action? I already have my Delta Project prelude, which is this, to do that. Well, you can only do this once per gen. As I said, if you don't have Delta Surge, then you really want to do only 1 step at a time. So only spend 1 power to do 1 step optimally to get all of the rewards on the track. With Storm Surge Barrier, you can do that twice per gen. You can first use your Prelude to do 1 step and then do Storm Surge Barrier to do 1 step. Or alternatively, you could just get a ton of power such that you are able to race up the track or trade. So if you going for like an ocean walk and you have an early city down, I think Storm Surge Barrier is really nice. If we compare it to like a geothermal power, that costs 11 and gets you 2 power per gen. This has a faster payout because you can use it immediately. It has some optionality because you can also use the other direction. So that's 2 upsides on geothermal power. Downside, it has this restriction or requirement, and it costs a bit more. But if you're getting 3 power out of the first option, it's already, in my opinion, quite a bit better than geothermal power. It can be quite strong, and I really like this optionality. As I said, the rewards on the track are really strong. You want to take each step individually. Storm Surge Barrier helps you do that and still race up the track. And that helps in getting the rewards faster, which is really nice because you want your resources faster in this game. And it helps you eventually reach the points first. So that's also quite nice. So in total, I think this is a really strong card and could be quite enjoyable to play. From what I understand, the card making contest will have a winner, and that winner's card will be printed in addition to the basic content of the expansion. So the Prelude and the Delta Project track, so that everyone can play with it. I would love for multiple of these cards to be printed because I think that expansion, the expansion, first of all, is, I think, really creative, really nice. I would love to play it as both an alternative to Colonies and to see how it interacts if you have both in game, what you prioritize and what you don't prioritize, and also such that you can use DeltaWorks 1 to its full potential. So I'd love for multiple cards of these to come out. And I think this expansion as a whole, I love. I love the concept of. I would love to play it. But yeah, I think all of these cards are really creative. I love all of them. I really can't tell which one I would pick as a winner. Really, really cool stuff. Once again, thanks to the Dutch Terraforming Mars guys for letting me take a look at those cards. And you will find all of the information on the Dutch Open in the description, as I said already. And if you enjoyed this video, please leave a like and consider subscribing. And I hope I see you in the next one. Have a good one, guys, and goodbye.